Clarkson Farm is a hit in this country. And we are fascinated by the level of government intervention into absolutely every aspect of British life. Americans are staggered by it. One of the things they take from Clarkson Farm and some of the commentary on this show is that that's the kind of stuff that's coming to this country if Kamala Harris is elected. If Democrats stay in power, all bets are off.
Clarkson is the great embodiment of everything that's brilliant about Britain. He refuses to be destroyed. The establishment have tried to destroy that man more often than they've tried to destroy anybody else. And he chronicles throughout this series the absolute, rolls of red tape that British government does to try and kill off the working class rural community, which is essentially the job of big government at the moment. It's to kill off farmers, white working class people, and everything else. That's their sole desire in life. And welcome to another episode of WTF, World According to Taunton and Fox, or what the, depending on what mood you're in that day. I'm sorry that you find me in a strange London hotel. It's not a strange London hotel. It's a lovely London hotel. And the light is fading, but my beautiful face will stay there with you. Larry, have you got any videos of, before I ask how you are, have you got any videos of women beating up cushions or anything like that?
I do. It is a great video of women on a rage retreat. But as for how I'm doing very well. Like you, it's a little off-putting because, we're rushing from one thing to the next today. I just recorded an episode of Ideas Have Consequences. I didn't leave the guys time to change the set, and now I can't find my earbuds, so I'm relegated to using these very cumbersome earphones. But that's it.
You look good. You look good. You look like a bomber pilot. Oh, on a quick sort of sideways thing because it's fun. I was down the pub last night, and I was saying to the guys, because there's a big reservoir by my house, and I said to the guys, why is it fenced off? Because you should be able to fish reservoirs in England. And they said, oh, it's to protect all the birds. But then Roger, who is the fountain of all knowledge where I live, Roger turned around at me and went, where they tested the bouncing bomb on that reservoir. And I thought to myself, over 70 years ago, some lunatic had an idea to turn a bomb into something that bounced and hit a German dam. And nowadays we've got smartphones and no one is sort of anything nearly as ingenious as that for decades. Anyway, there we go. Side point.
It's really amazing. Thinking of your laws regarding reservoirs and protecting wildlife, Clarkson Farm is Jeremy Clarkson's show. Clarkson Farm is a hit in this country on Amazon. People have never heard of Jeremy Clarkson. I know he's a big deal there, but he wasn't here. He's largely unknown except to a few gearheads, who would, turn into Top Gear. And we are fascinated by the level of government intervention into absolutely every aspect of British life. Americans are staggered by it. And I hope that one of the and you know this because you come to my place. I'm quite rural here, and you ask, where can I shoot your AR-15? And I said, well, just shoot it off the deck. And so Americans are used to a high level of freedom. But I hope one of the things they take from Clarkson Farm and some of the commentary on this show is that that's the kind of stuff that's coming to this country if Kamala Harris is elected. If Democrats stay in power, all bets are off. It is trouble for, if not the total collapse of, the Western world as we know it.
It is. Also, Clarkson is the great embodiment of everything that's brilliant about Britain. He refuses to be destroyed. The establishment have tried to destroy that man more often than they've tried to destroy anybody else. So he's kicked off Top Gear for punching, allegedly, a producer. And, oh, crikey, what have I done? Sorry. Oh, Hang on a second. Right, I'm back. Sorry, my son
Leave
is
that
trying
in.
my son is trying to get in touch with me, and it's he usually needs something if he's trying to get in touch with me. So he's kicked off Top Gear for punching a producer,
I
and
remember
then
that.
yes, so Jeremy Clarkson is the great survivor of of British TV. He was fired from Top Gear. He's obviously he's sort of socially conservative guy, and then he did the grand tour with Amazon, and that didn't really. I mean, it was great, but it was sort of a rehash of Top Gear. And then he did Clarkson's Farm. He went and bought a farm, and he decided to try farming because he's that sort of guy. And he just bumped into the biggest amount of red tape and bureaucracy that the British government could throw at anybody. I've had this problem we talked about last week in terms of my chickens. I've got to register my chickens. It's like, we don't have to register undocumented migrants, but your chickens need to be registered. And he chronicles throughout this series the absolute, rolls of red tape that British government does to try and kill off the working class rural community, which is essentially the job of big government at the moment. It's to kill off farmers, white working class people, and everything else. That's their sole desire in life. And the fact that he comes out swinging every time and he wins just goes to show. And I think we've got this more broadly in life, is that the most popular people, the people who speak the most common sense in the whole of our country, are the most hated and the most reviled. We've had today.
Do you think that's really true? Do you think that's really true, or that's the impression media wants to give you? That's the propaganda. I mean, the sense I get just watching Clarkson Farm, he's massively popular. He's got millions of followers, and when he tweets that they're opening up what do they call it? The diddly squat, farm shop. The local, essentially the HOA, the homeowners association, the little local town council are tyrannous because they don't want people parking alongside the road. But he has people coming from all over Britain. Do you really think he's unpopular?
I think amongst the chattering middle classes, I think he's loathed. I think amongst the ordinary people of the country, he's loved. But it really does matter what the media and what the government and that collusion between the institutional governmental media complex does, because it destroys someone. Where he's very clever is that he's just an honest, straightforward, he likes a beer and he likes some, I don't think the man's testing his cholesterol on a regular basis. Do you know what I mean? And he lives this life, and he's kind of bulletproof to your average Brit. And, at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie, do they? Clarkson's Farm is huge in America. It's huge in the United Kingdom as well. And it's very educational and informative because it gives us an insight into what these servants of the community do every day, day in, day out. And I live as you know, in a very, very rural area. And I see what the farmers get up to every day. And to imagine that they're not just like applauded as they walk back into the house, that's annoying enough. But to think that they try and make their lives so obsolete so they can carpet this country with carbon counting solar panels. And Clarkson has just gone, here's a light, I'll shine it on your stupidity. And quite rightly, Amazon, they'll probably cancel his show now because but it's the same with veterans. Farming and veterans are similar, and funeral directors to a certain degree. It's a niche industry. You go into it because it's a family business. And, you know that what the hardships are, and you inherit it from your father, and you grow up and you realize the hardships of what farming are in the same way as you do in the military. And it's an ever diminishing number of people in the UK, and there's not a month goes by without you hearing of a farmer taking his own life in the back in one of his barns with a shotgun in the UK. Not a month goes by, because they just make it so impossible for you to raise an animal in love and then to harvest it and serve it up for people without just making it impossible. And it's just it's classic communism, isn't it? What did they do with the kulaks? They used to kill them for trying to go and pick up bits of grain from their own fields just because they were slightly better off than the lazy little proletariat who want to run the country at the moment. I don't know. It makes me annoyed, really. So good for him, essentially, is my sort of roundabout way of saying it.
Well, I think what he's done has been a great service to farmers throughout the Western world, really, but particularly in the English-speaking world, because people are not aware, for the most part, where their food is coming from, what goes into producing it. And it's made farming cool. The show has made farming cool. And, one of the things I've appreciated about Clarkson in this is I was a fan of Top Gear. I was flying Virgin Airlines 20 years ago. Top Gear you couldn't watch Top Gear in the United States, but this is 20 years ago. I am on a Virgin Airlines flight, and I'm looking around at the available options of things that I can watch on TV, and I see this show called Top Gear, and I thought, I didn't see anything in the movies that I wanted to watch. There was, maybe a couple of options with Laurence Fox, but I mean, who wants to watch that? So I decided that I would watch this show, and I was howling. I thought the show was so funny, and I became really. They should have paid me because I began telling people, you got to watch this show. It's very witty. It's about cars, but you don't have to love cars to watch it. He's offering a lot of social commentary as he goes along with, James May and what's the other guy's name? Richard Hammond, The three of them. And they could be pretty smug and very condescending towards just ordinary people. For instance, they did an episode where they came through my part of the country, and it was like Borat. They just mocked absolutely everyone. And I get it. It was low hanging fruit, and they're having a lot of fun doing that. In Clarkson Farm, and I can't remember his name, but the older guy who got cancer, who's very difficult to understand, Jeremy Clarkson, early in that, I thought, this poor guy, he's going to Borat him. He's going to hold this guy up and mock him. And he has made him a hero of that show. As well he should have. And he's done the same thing with the younger guy, Caleb. He's made them stars. He's been humbled. He's been humble in the way that he's done the show. And I've appreciated that because rather than it being sort of the typical, urban versus rural humor, we're going to mock the people who live in the countryside. They're not as sophisticated and as cool as we are. Look at their hairstyles and listen to the way they talk. He's done exactly the opposite. He has embraced the countryside and said, I like you guys more than I like, really where I've made my living. And in some sense, you can kind of relate to that because you're going through that process in your own life. You've come here and you've kind of experienced, the rural South. But you are now, as you just said, you now live in a rural area. You are rapidly becoming a British redneck.
Well, I was a British redneck years ago. When I got married, my so far only marriage, which is soon to be remedied, my only marriage, I lived in the countryside for 10 years. So I know how country people live, and I admire and love them much more than, I think I've said this before to you on this show. I think cities are places where bad ideas form and they're implemented as well. So I feel honored to hang around with these people, as does Jeremy Clarkson, because, he knows he's got a good life. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to, as you say, he's trying to entertain, but commentate socially as well at the same time. It's a very important job. And he's managed to, as many times they've tried to cancel him, he's managed to maintain just stay in there because he's just too big for them. And, he has made them stars, and he's made British farming a star. And he's just by saying, look how ridiculous it is. And one of the most poignant things of they did the last grand tour, which is their driving show, is that they deal with their own obsolescence, or is that the right word for obsolete?
Yes.
You know, so they're dealing with their own. They say there's no point in us with electric cars. There's no point. We don't exist. It's like, yes, it goes very fast. Yeah, it has a battery. Great. What do you want me to say about it? It has no soul, has no character, it has no nothing. And so they finished it because they used to care about, you used to care about a Hemi, a straight six, a V8, a V6, a flat four, a V-twin, there were so many options to do with petrol, and I'm a mega petrol head. So I want to talk about petrol for a second. Sorry.
I have a little gift to offer you on this in just a moment. Go ahead.
Okay. So, I bought the Raptor, right?
Yeah.
I imagine in America that comes with a Hemi. Does it?
Well, a Hemi is Dodge or Ram. Yours probably, that's a Ford engine, and it's usually the Raptor is north of 600 horsepower, but it's a Ford engine. It's not a.
But it's still a Ram engine. It's still a V8. Yeah.
Yes, most definitely a V8.
Right. So in the Raptor in England, what do they do? Because you can't get a V8 in England because V8s are bad for some reason, even though they're not.
Yes, of course.
They stick in a 3-litre V6 EcoBoost. Still powerful.
I hate the EcoBoost.
It's still a powerful engine, but it doesn't weigh anything. It doesn't weigh anything.
Yeah.
So I find myself driving to the station the other day, and obviously it doesn't have straight road tyres. It's got knuckle tyres. And I just put the gas down a little bit as I'm coming round onto dual carriageway, and it's a part where a lot of military vehicles go, so it's very smooth. And the whole thing went into a 4-wheel slide. And I'm like, this truck weighs 2 and a bit tons, and if it had a proper engine in it, I wouldn't be sliding across towards the barrier now. And you know what miles per gallon I get out of it? I think I'm paying 50 pence per mile. In the UK, it does between 15 and 17 miles to the gallon, this car. If you put a V8 in that would be doing 23.
Yeah.
And
I like my Ram.
Yeah.
I like my Ram 1500, which has 5.7 liter Hemi V8 in it, and sounds like it, and moves like it. And on the interstate, if you're not driving real fast, you'll probably get about 23, 24 miles to the gallon.
Yeah.
Out of that. Not around town, you won't get that, but we're kind of making a little divergence here. But one of the ways that you can help that, a pickup truck is necessarily light in the rear end. And, of course, it's a rear-wheel drive. So a pickup truck, as a rule, doesn't get quite the traction that it ought to get unless it's got some weight in the back. But assuming that your Raptor is a 4-wheel drive, anytime it's wet, put it in 4-wheel drive. My friends up north say, well, you don't need a 4-wheel drive in the South. No, we absolutely do, because of the rains that we get, such as those that have wrecked, half of North Carolina. We get monsoon-like rains here, and the way to make that thing hold the road is to put it into 4-wheel drive auto whenever you get some rain. You still were sliding.
It's in that. It's the weight.
And I put some sandbags.
Yeah. Well, it's full, it's usually full of something or other. And, but anyway, we diverge. Can we please get back to the important topic at hand?
Well, let me say this. This will interest our listeners, our viewers. It won't happen this time. At least I don't think I can make it happen this time when you're here. You're here next week, and we're going to have some fun. But I have a sponsor who is sending us to the Porsche driving experience. The two of us.
Oh.
It's a 2-day course. So we have
Why is that not happening this time?
Because they are fully booked. They are fully booked for the next few months. So we have to get in the queue to do that. But it's a 2-day course.
Top Gear, right?
Yeah.
Who has got the record for the fastest lap on Top Gear?
You've done it. You do. You were the star in the reasonably priced car.
Yeah, me. Who's got the fastest through the width restriction?
Who did that.
No, wet lap. But they admitted when I did the wet lap, they said if it had been dry, you would have beaten everyone.
Fantastic.
I don't want to show off, but there's very little I can show off about, and that I can. But listen, I want to talk about girls screaming.
Well, Porsche driving experience is going to be cool. We are going to do that. Yeah, let's watch this little video here of these women howling. Okay, so what is your knee-jerk reaction to this video, which supposedly is real? It's not parody. You have all these women in their, their spandex and their yoga pants and their jogging bras, and they are beating these pillows at this rage weekend. And if you keep watching, one woman, she begins weeping and wailing, and they're counseling her, saying, "Yeah, let it all out." What do you think when you watch $4,000 to go on a rage weekend?
I think it's kind of two things. One is I think it's great, which is that, they do say, I remember one of the very few decent therapists I've met, 89, 90% of them are absolute charlatans. One of the good therapists I met said, it's good to go and punch a heavy bag. That'll help you when you're annoyed about something. And it's true, it does help you. Punch a heavy bag for a while, you feel a hell of a lot better. But the problem with women screaming is, without wishing to sound even more misogynistic than I naturally am, is like, it doesn't help. I mean, it's a manifest, what is it? It's a sort of, you shouldn't encourage a woman to be hysterical, is what I'm saying. I don't think women benefit if you go, be more hysterical. In the same way as you shouldn't encourage men to be hysterical. You shouldn't encourage people to go, to go and scream and then to profit from it and pay money from it. I think it's sort of embarrassing, but it's totally indicative of modern society, which is like, something is wrong and you have to heal it now. Whereas sorry, you go. What do you think of it?
No.
Useless.
Well, have you seen this TV show Pale Horse?
No.
Okay, well, don't watch it. I didn't think it was particularly good. It's Rufus Sewell and some other people that I recognize, but whose names I don't know. Very stylish, set in Britain in the early 60s, kind of a film noir. I got about 30 minutes into it. It was just too dark for me, and I just decided, okay, I don't want to watch this. But there's this scene in it where his wife, who plays Rufus Sewell's wife, who plays the stereotype of the 50s, 60s housewife. She's obedient and, she's keeping house and she's utterly devoted to her man. This is the way the left envisions it, like she's in some kind of slavery. And when he leaves the house, she's a woman who's under total control. She goes into the kitchen and gets a butcher knife. And she goes and gets on her knees and she takes a pillow from the couch and she starts screaming and stabbing it and stabbing it and stabbing it, and feathers are flying everywhere. And then the next scene is he comes home and they're having dinner and she's very much under control. And there's not a feather to be seen until the end of their conversation. A feather drops from the ceiling and she catches it in her hand and she says, "Oh, we've been visited by an angel." But I thought, I wonder if whoever has come up with this, rage weekend idea got the idea from the Pale Horse, because that's what you saw there. I'm not sure that I agree with you, Laurence. I'm going to push back just a little bit, that the idea of venting, and I think maybe that's what you're saying. You can tell me if I'm wrong.
Against yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Carry on.
I don't know. I don't know if I think that's a healthy thing. And you kind of pulled it back on the other side when you said encouraging a woman to be more hysterical than she might tend to be anyway is a good thing, or a man. But I don't know. I don't know what I think of this idea that somehow that's a healthy thing. And I also think it's interesting that almost certainly these are lefties who are running this program. And they get you on both ends. On the one hand, they've sold women on a lie that fulfillment is found away from children, away from family. It is found in the corporate world. And then when these women find themselves to be frustrated and unfulfilled, then they're selling them the $4,000 weekend to go in and beat pillows. And it's even worse than that. They say, not only is it not found at home and with children, we encourage you to kill your children and to hate men. And oh, by the way, we offer the rage weekend when life doesn't work out for you the way that you wanted it to.
Yeah, look, I get it. But also it's the thing is, we know, and it's well documented across England and across any boxing gym in America, that you give a young man, an angry young man, a bit of direction, it's going to help him. Punch him in the bag, give him some purpose, direction, and all that sort of stuff. The kind of narcissistic element of having to punch some cushions because you can afford $4,000 to be told that, you know, men are terrible and your children are a burden and an encumbrance around your life. That I totally disagree with. But I think that physical exertion of any kind, like even going for a walk, you know, one of the things I've realized since moving to the countryside is walk over uneven ground. If you walk on flat ground, like you do in a city, you can get out of breath and stuff like that. But if you walk over uneven ground, and I have a walk where I walk on flat ground and then it gets a bit rougher, you get really hot and out of breath just from walking over uneven ground, which is just using up all these bottom bits of your leg, all of these muscles. And you start to go, we were intended to move a lot more than we do. This is just who comes up with the price of $4,000? What should we charge these women, these crazy angry women who hate their husbands, who've got loads of money? What do we charge them to, you know, beat up some cushions and tell them that they're all right? Let's charge them $4,000. It's the standard lie of the left, which is there's a problem and it can be solved by you giving me some money and you feeling like a victim. And it's like, no. I mean, if my son said to me, I'm going to a rage camp, I'd go, enjoy. But then, you know, I do want to take this, let's take this on, because Elon Musk has said again today, which is great. The guy is, yesterday, with Tucker, was talking about what, you know, the way that these women didn't end up beating up cushions by accident. It was an entire... Oh,
they discussed that on their show.
It was an entire nurturing position of the fact that they've been wronged and there's something wrong with them and it's terrible and they need to beat up a cushion. It's like it starts in childhood. If you teach a kid, you know, the best lesson a kid can ever learn is tough luck. The best lesson they can ever learn. But instead we go, no, there can be no tough luck. What you must have is some pills. We'll give you some of this. And Elon Musk just called it out yesterday with Tucker. He just turned around and said, this stuff is satanic. This stuff makes you want to kill yourself. And they're giving it to children and to adults as well. I mean, it's just appalling.
Well, I think I mentioned to you, you'd sent me this film, which I watched. You promised to send me a code and never did, but I ended up paying for it, so it's okay. I watched this film, Do No Farm, P-H-A-R-M.
Yes.
Do No Farm. And I think I could say this on here. I'm allowed to say this. We can say what we want on this show. As you know, we've been dealing with a few things with my mother. And my mom, without going into great detail here, but my mom had suffered a stroke quite recently. And so we've been assisting her, and we've been trying to determine, you know, what the effects of the stroke actually are. And some people are going to laugh at this or think that I'm woefully ignorant when it comes to this, but I can't say that when I see headlines about drugs and prescription drugs and this sort of thing, I pay too much attention, because it isn't something that is encroached upon my life. But now it is. So my wife, who is a nurse, she's noticing that my mother has no appetite, and we can hardly get her to eat a thing. We can hardly get her to drink a thing. And she starts looking at the drugs that she's been prescribed. And one of them is Ozempic. And Ozempic is a appetite suppressing drug. Now, my mother is, what is she now? She's 82 years old. And they have given a woman who is already frail.
She's not a big lady either. You just have to make sure you understand that this is not a big woman. This is a very not a big woman.
No, she's already frail. She's already really underweight. And they've given her Ozempic because supposedly it is good for diabetics. And the result of that has been, as we were reading the side effects of this, something that they call like a stone stomach, meaning the way that they help someone lose weight is not by saying, well, you know what, you're overweight. Maybe it would help to get and walk over some uneven ground. Maybe it would help to eat, healthier. They don't do that. They say, here's a prescription drug. And that's because you walking over uneven ground, how do I monetize that? I can't make any money off of that, but I can make money off of prescription drugs. And what that drug does is it slows down your digestion so that it's moving very, very slowly through your system. And the result of that is that you don't feel like eating. But the problem is we are struggling to get, 1,500 calories, 1,000 calories into my mom every day because she would be satisfied with eating maybe a piece of toast for the whole day. That's it. And that's the effect of these drugs. And the evil of this stuff is absolutely incredible to me. And when I look back now knowing what I know about this drug, and I'm continuing to learn about some of the other drugs that they prescribed, Lipitor and a variety of others that can have some really, really serious side effects. I mentioned this to my boys, and they said, "Oh, Dad, Ozempic is huge with our age group." And I said, "Really? Like, 20-somethings, 30-somethings? Really?" They said, "Oh, yeah. Young women a lot of them are on this drug. And the effect of this psychologically, but also because they're trying to keep what appears to be an ultra-fit body when perhaps they're terribly unhealthy because rather than it being the result of, actual, fitness, actual exercise, it's drug induced. And when I watched that video, I've even wondered how much of this, and we can't know, we're only speculating, but I started thinking, is this like some kind of prescription drug rave party weekend that these women are probably all on antidepressants, they're probably all on birth control, which is, can have some serious ramifications, Ozempic, you name it. And I noticed a lot of times women on the left are not particularly attractive. And these are all actually rather attractive, very fit looking women, which also made me think, is this an SNL skit? But I mean, really, how much of the societal problems are being caused? And maybe this is an unfair question for you, but how much of the problems that we're seeing in society are actually artificially induced by prescription drugs? I haven't paid much attention to this issue, though I was in Geneva earlier this year at a kind of an anti-World Health Organization a meeting. But you're far more knowledgeable of this than I am, so enlighten me.
Well, just to touch on the Ozempic thing, one of the fascinating things that a scene reveals in that documentary is that not only does Ozempic take away half your fat, but it takes away muscle mass in equal quantity. So you're taking a frail old lady and you're removing... Which is
what's happening to her.
And you're turning her into a stone, giving her a stone stomach so she can't eat. And then you're taking all her muscle mass away so she can't stand upright either. And then if you can't stand upright and you can't move and you can't exercise, you can't think. You can't think unless you move. It's it's actually probably my most fundamental belief. You cannot be healthy unless you move. I think it's crucial. But to see the medicalization, they tried it with the COVID vaccine. They thought this would be great. I get email after email from the schools, my children's schools saying, the flu vaccine people are coming in. Do you want a flu vaccine? I'm like, no, I want my child to get flu. I want their immune system to know what it's like to get flu. And if that means, one child in 10,000 sadly passes away as a result of it, your immune system needs to be jerked into action. As COVID proved, silly injections did nothing. And now that they realize that they can't do that, Ozempic's a good one for them, but they'll get caught out on that too. But the one thing they can make money on, and the one thing that is guaranteed sale, is you can tell a helicopter parent and a guilt-ridden liberal parent that there's something wrong with their child, and you can pathologize childhood. And I have the number of parents I speak to, and to the point where it's now become part of what I do, the number of parents that I've spoken to who have their children on huge numbers of drugs. And the snake oil salesmen that sell these drugs to these kids and turn them into sort of vegetables. I'm so grateful that Elon Musk uses his platform to talk about this. Your children become unrecognizable. And then, you have the school shooter problem in America, and they say, well, were they on any meds? So you can't talk about that. So I have gone in a few short years, in 5 years since the pandemic, 4 years since the pandemic, I've gone from thinking, polio sugar cubes and sterilizing smallpox vaccines and penicillin and isn't it wonderful? And my mum going, don't overuse antibiotics. You're not going to be able to now every single medical professional who's trying to give any drug to anyone I know, I immediately see them as a snake oil salesman until they can be proven otherwise. I think that it's a gross disrespect to God as well. I always thought that during the pandemic. I was just like, if God had wanted us to have face masks, we would have had this piece of skin that flapped over our noses and our mouths. But no, we just got hairy nostrils and tonsils and things, because we're meant to get ill. We're meant to be diverse in our suffering. And I just think it's so indicative again of this very terrified, short-termist way of looking at the world, which is like, well, if I take this drug, then I will be thin. But then you look at someone like Lizzo, who I think is being really brave. She's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. She's documenting it online. I think it's a great thing for obese Americans to see a really, really fat person becoming a much thinner one. And if she needs Ozempic to help her get there, and she's got a proper diet, and she's doing all the other stuff, then great. There is a place for modern medicine everywhere. But, you do think, like the hormonal, contraception stuff as well that Elon was talking about, you do think it's just overprescribed. And at some point, you have to turn around and start to go, even if it's a tiny little bit of responsibility, because we're all fallen and we're all weak and we all love muffins. I mean, I love Laurie's muffins. I have to not have 3 of them. But we should allow this sort of modern Puritan, woke Puritanism means that you lose everything about your body and your connection with the whole of yourself and your connection with your creation and all of that. And everything is diagnosable and prescribable and solvable. But, as you found out with the Ozempic with your mum, and as all the young generation, it used to be Ritalin, with my generation, everyone was on Ritalin. They were on speed all the time. And now they give it to kids. But it's not the answer to your problem. Your problem is you're angry. You don't need to stab a cushion. You need to deal with your anger. And the way you deal with anger is you ask for strength. You don't submit to your basest stuff. I mean, it's just logical. I don't understand why everyone is so hell-bent on the shortest route between A and B, even if that short route does you great harm.
Yeah, well, for sure. We are a quick fix society. That's what we want. 3 things. I think that you had said earlier something about a young man, entering into the, doing boxing or something like that. And then you use the word purpose. I think a lot of the anger stems from purposelessness. Being happy, to me, happy is not the word. It's the word that's promoted in society, but I think we should talk instead more in terms of contentment. Are you contented? And so that's
fulfillment. Right. Happy is another word which has been. Sorry to interrupt you because this really pisses me off. Happy is another word which has been totally appropriated, like progressivism.
Yeah,
it's like we are a very progressive society. Thank you very much. We are naturally very progressive. Look at what these cavemen do in the Middle East yesterday. an anniversary a year yesterday. These nasty little people that have given up their right to humanity, as far as I'm concerned. These animals who did this in the Middle East. Look at them. We are a progressive society. We are a tolerant society. We may be over-tolerant in some ways, that there's a conversation to be had. But they've taken this word progressive and turned it into their word WTF, sorry, on that one. And then they've taken the word happy. And we all know what happy means. Everyone knows what happy means. Is your child happy?
We've appropriated WTF and intend to give it a new societal meaning so that people from now on, when they say WTF, they're meaning the world of Taunton and Fox. Have you seen WTF? That will be what's happening on London double-decker buses. I mean,
definitely. That's
what's coming in New York's subways. Anyway, first thing is purpose. We're teleological beings. We're created with purpose, and when we don't find that purpose, we become deeply discontented, angry people, brooding people who need to take steak knives to pillows. Second thing is, I very much agree with you about you got to move in order to, really think properly. We've noticed this a little bit with my mother. We have found that when she is sedentary all day long, which is somewhat necessary given that she feels fatigue and, she has medications that add to some of those things. But when we can get her up and get her moving.
They stopped her peristalsis.
Exactly.
They stuck a drug in her to stop her peristalsis so that the entire organism of the human being doesn't work, because that is what drives you. You've got a muscle, an involuntary, it's like breathing. They've done the same anyway, stop it, Laurence.
Well,
Sorry.
you get her up and get her moving. And yesterday she was wheeling around the house. She's got her walker that has some wheels on the front. And she was doing that for about 20 minutes, and suddenly she's quite chatty, and all the synapses are firing. It's very different when she's been sitting in that chair for a couple of hours. Changes everything. Third thing, did you notice, speaking of appropriation, Tucker and Elon must be subscribers to WTF, because in the same interview that you just referenced, did you notice that they said that leftist politicians, referring to Kamala, that they are just empty suits who are actors reading off of a script? Did you see that?
I did, and I thought of you.
We said that last week. They watched it and they stole it and put it on their show. But they said almost word for word what we said here last week. So we are informing the masses because we're influencers of influencers on this show. That's who we are. That's what we do.
Well, I think when I'm not in a furious rage, which I'm in at the moment today, because
there's some pillows behind you I can see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. When I'm not in a when we, you and I have spent, and a lot of interesting people have spent time thinking about it, and then Elon's brilliant about. I love the way he responds to questions. And someone will ask him a question, do you believe in God, for example? I think Tucker asked him. And he sort of stopped. And you could tell he was really thinking about it. But I think that what is wonderful about these conversations, which are now happening everywhere, is that we are all influencing each other. And we're creating... What we're doing is we have this sunken, broken ship of Christianity. It's been, there have been archbishops of Canterbury storing holes in the bottom of the ship. There have been, deacons in churches and pastors bringing on as many rats many rats as they can. They've been getting maggots on the ship. They've been doing everything, and Christianity sunk. Essentially, in a lot of ways, in a formal way, and then people are putting it back together. And even Elon acknowledged, and there's very interesting. I listened to an interesting physicist today who was talking about God, and you're thinking they're all going to the same place, which is the thing that you have replaced God with. Not only isn't worthy, it is the exact opposite of what God is. So you by conjuring kindness, you conjure Satan, and by misappropriating language and saying, that line that mothers say to mothers across the room, and you see it as a father, you're sat watching whatever, and the mother says to the other mother, is he happy or is she happy? You know what the question means. It means, are they okay? Are they going to be okay? It's a really important question between women. Between men, we're just like, yeah, I'm fine, whatever. But we have to focus on something. We just have to focus on something that isn't Puritanism with no end goal. Like there's nothing. Who wants to go and bash a pillow for $4,000? What? So you get to leave and go, yeah, I feel really much better now. I can go back and see my husband who I hate and I don't want to have sex with or children with. It's like, well, I don't want that life. I don't want my kids to have that life. I will rail against that life, and I will encourage my children in purpose. And when they err and do bad things that are wrong, I will encourage them in repentance and also teach them forgiveness. It's like we cannot operate in a world where forgiveness is dominated by man-made forgiveness. It doesn't work. You cannot be forgiven by a man. You have to be forgiven you have to ask forgiveness of God, and then God has to give forgiveness to you. It doesn't work the other way around, where man goes, oh, I've decided I'll forgive someone, or I've decided the way I'm going to deal with being angry is by beating on this pillow. It's like, it doesn't work. If it worked, I'd be on your side, but it doesn't work. And if anything, you're conjuring the devil doing it. That's what I think. Sorry, rant over.
Well, we've been here before as a society. I'm mindful of, at least as the West is concerned, I'm mindful of the French Revolution. After the 1789 revolution, of course, it was replaced by the so-called, misnomer of misnomers, the so-called Committee of Public Safety. Robespierre, the guillotining of roughly 20,000 Parisians, but they were atheistic, and they turned a lot of the churches into museums of atheism. They tried to deprogram the people who believed in God by even changing the week, because they thought it's so ingrained in them that they render one day of the week to God, Sunday, that we're going to change the calendar utterly. Anyway, these things weren't working, and public morality declined the more atheistic they became. So the committee created this ridiculous thing they called the cult of supreme being. Even had a statue that this would be a new God, that it would be a state-sponsored God. And, of course, people looked at it and said, but it's so obviously made with your hands. It's so obviously fake. And that's kind of where we are right now. And the result was that when Napoleon came along, he allowed some of these churches to go back to being churches. There was a recognition in order, as Washington said in his farewell address in September of 1796, he said, public morality cannot be maintained apart from religion. And by religion, by the way, he meant the Christian faith. Washington himself was a Christian. He wasn't just referring to some vague, Mohammedanism, or whatever. But anyway, before we leave, because I know you've got a hard out, I think our audience would love to see you go and beat one of those pillows right behind us.
This bed, just so...
And you can bend me 4,000 pounds for this.
This bed is made up for my son coming tomorrow night. Okay. What am I angry about?
Prescription drugs.
Don't give drugs to children that don't need it. Okay, what else am I... I'm worried that another hotel guest will be upset. Okay, what else am I angry about?
Keir Starmer.
I'm not even angry with him. He's just a politician. They are what they are. Okay. What would I actually benefit from hitting this pillow about?
That really, you won't get to do the Porsche driving experience on this trip, but on a later trip.
Just leave our kids alone. Let them grow up. Let them learn the hard way, the easy way, the good way and the bad way. There's going to be
Do you feel better?
No. My dad picked me up from when I was a kid, when I went out on probably my first or second big night out with the guys. It was a carnage. I was offered all the drugs.
How old were you?
14.
Okay.
I took some of them. And it was really terrifying as my mind was taken over by these drugs. And I suddenly became a little boy again. And I called my dad. I said, please, can you come and get me? And it was up North London, not far from where I used to live when I was married. And he did. He drove late at night and he came and picked me up. And he never made me feel bad about it. He never did anything. He just put his hand on the back of my neck, gave it a squeeze, and we got home. And then we got out of the car and he went, "Don't do that again. It's not good for you." I was like, he's right. I mean, I didn't obey him, but I obeyed him for the next 2 or 3 years. I was scared of it. So, we need the wisdom that comes down from the parent. We need the connection in the family. We need to fight like hell for the family. We really do, because, they want to replace the person who gives you Ozempic and SSRIs and Ritalin and all the crap that they try and fill children with so that they don't feel any emotions at all. Those people need to be fought more than governments. We need to finish on the thing that every single wise person tells me always, which is we do not fight blah, 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 blah. We fight princes and principalities. Is that, what's the line?
Flesh and blood.
We do
not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against, essentially against the spiritual realm, principalities and whatnot. But yes, we're not wrestling against, a nice way to put it maybe is this, that just as Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson were stealing the content from the previous episode of WTF and saying that politicians are sock puppets for those players who are behind them. What the Apostle Paul is arguing in that passage is he's saying the evil that we see in this world is not really those people. It is that they are sock puppets for the dark spiritual realm, the demonic, the satanic world that stands behind them. It's not flesh and blood, but the spiritual realm that is behind it. And that, I believe, is really where we are.
Okay, so next week what I want to talk about is how one channels that. Because for me, as you may or may not have noticed this evening, it wasn't helped by the fact that halfway through our conversation, I got, another message from people that just shouldn't be doing what they're doing. But is that there is a fury in me about this, and I want to know. Lizzie says to me all the time, she says, you have to be canny. You have to know your enemy, know what your enemy wants, and then don't give them it. And be unpredictable and work in a different way. Whereas I'm solidly like frontline. If it was World War I, I would be like, I'll go over at the top again. I don't mind. That's just sort of what I'm like as a person. And I want to talk about how we take these bastards down, because they got to be said. They got to get, well, not them, but the ideology has to go. I can't. It's driving me beyond insane to think about what is being done to people I love, for which I have absolutely no say, and I just think it's appalling.
I'm with you on that. And on that note,
on that cheerful note, Tucker, Elon, you're welcome. Take what you want from this week's episode.
And yes, please take what you want from this week's episode. We're going to influence them and numerous others. Megyn Kelly, I'm sure she listens to, steals the content of this show, repackages it. The next episode of WTF is going to be on my porch, or maybe we should do it on my dock.
Well, you should do it on the dock. We should definitely do it on the dock.
Okay, let's plan on that.
And also, we should maybe have a guest. I mean, I don't know if Laurie wants to be a guest, but I think we should invite Lizzie to be a guest.
I'm happy to have Lizzie as a guest. I'm happy to have women.
I think it would be.
I know you're misogynistic, but I'm not. I'm definitely not.
You're very no. It's obvious to me that you're very, very. You're the guy going $4,000 for what, honey? And you're like, pillow, heaven, okay. For how long? 2 days? What is the pillow special? Yeah. Anyway.
Do you know the TV show Columbo?
Yeah.
Yeah, iconic. I was watching an episode of it last night, and I howled. I'd looked up the episode. It's 1971, but there's a scene where Columbo walks into an office, and he's talking to a young attorney. He's an associate. And he says, I don't know how you do it. And this lawyer says, do what? And he says, work for a woman. He said, I don't know how you do it. And then it goes on to something else. And I thought, today, Peter Falk would lose his job. Columbo would lose his job. The show would be canceled. There would be riots. But yeah, let's have Lizzie. Let's do that. Let's have Lizzie on the dock. And
yeah, well, no, it might not be the right thing to do. But I think that it would be.
Maybe we should consult her and ask her if she wants to be on the show.
Yeah, well, but I sometimes think, and I think it would. Laurie obviously has Lizzie's fiery, right? She's calm, but she's fiery, and Laurie has impeccable timing with everything she does. And I just wonder whether we should be elevating sane women as well. Because, the world is full of podcasts full of crazy women. To have a sane woman say something, because, I reckon girls watch this too. I don't think it's just men. So
I think our audience is overwhelmingly women.
I think it's overwhelmingly.
I mean, think about it.
Tucker Carlson.
We're
two over and over again.
We're two sexy middle-aged men. Obviously, this show attracts loads of women. Spandex wearing, yoga pant wearing women.
I'm getting my hair cut when we come to Alabama.
Okay, so you wanted me to take you to the same shop?
Yeah, I will.
Well, I'll get my hair cut there when I'm there too.
I'm looking forward to seeing your mum. I love you.
All right, buddy. Listen, you take care. This has been WTF with Laurence Fox and Larry Alex Taunton. See you next time.